If I can ever have everyone's attention for a minute here. For those who didn't see the notice on the door, the CDA meeting was canceled this evening due to the notice not being properly noticed in the paper. This meeting is going to be moved to March 3rd, same time at 5:15. The same agenda will be presented.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the City of Norfolk City Council meeting, February 18th, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I want to inform the public of the location of the Open Meeting Act posted in the council chambers and accessible to members of the public. We're going to have a moment of silence here, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist?
Here.
Arns?
Here.
Webb?
Here.
McCarthy?
Here.
Beckman?
Here.
Jensen?
Here.
Langy?
Here.
Hildebrand?
Here.
Mayor?
All right, we need a motion and approval of the consent agenda. We are going to need to remove 11 off the agenda. And we're going to be moving item number 13 to the regular agenda. So that's the motion I need to, as follows, so.
I move for, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll make a motion with the removal of 11 and 13.
Well, 13
Second
will
that.
actually move to the regular.
Yeah,
so.
regular, yeah.
Gotcha.
Mayor, I will be abstaining from our consent agenda.
All right, thank you. All right, we got a motion and a second. Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Jensen, Langy, Webb, Beckman, abstaining, Hildebrand. Motion carries.
Right now, I need a motion to approve the full agenda, and that includes item number 13 to that full agenda.
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right. That moves us on to our special presentations tonight. We're going to have a special recognition of the Norfolk Pink Panthers. I'll read the proclamation and recognition here. Whereas the Norfolk High School Pink Panthers dance team has demonstrated exceptional dedication, teamwork, and resilience in competitive dance, and whereas in the 2024 season, the team earned the remarkable 19th finish in the small varsity Division II POM category at the Universal Dance Association National Dance Team Championship. And whereas through strong leadership, perseverance, and community support, the Pink Panthers have elevated their program to inspire Norfolk with their excellence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Shane Clausen, Mayor of Norfolk, or the City of Norfolk, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Norfolk High School Pink Panthers dance team for their outstanding achievements and contributions to our community. I think we have some Pink Panthers in the audience tonight. I know one of them pretty well. Their coach is here also. Why don't you guys come up? I'll give you this award and give you a chance to say something. These guys put a lot of effort in this season. Their season starts in the summer, and they start practicing in the early mornings. That's the only time they get gym time. We're up bright and early, then they go all the way through football season, all the way through basketball season, and then they get to their special competitions that they do. These are ladies put a lot of time and a lot of effort. This is their highest place rank. In their history, I suppose, right? Program history. So if you want to say anything, have the floor here.
It's really down to the girls that work this hard and spend the time and the effort wanting to improve this program. But with these girls, we also would not be here without the support that we have from the City of Norfolk. So thank you everyone that has seen us dance, cheered us on, and contributed to our program, because we could not
All right, moving on to the regular agenda. We're going to item number 13. Need a motion and consideration of approval of a new and revised policy in the city personnel manual specific to Chapter 8, attendance and leave. And I believe Jessica's going to speak on that.
I will offer for consideration the approval of the new and revised policies to the city's personnel manual.
Second.
All right, now, Jessica, you can go ahead.
Originally, we had brought these policies, procedures forward in the subcommittee last month. So several council members were involved with the discussion and the changes. We discovered after this was on the agenda that we do have an amendment to make to our vacation leave policy. So that's section 8.30, that's the policy. And really in section G, it talks about our VIBA account, which is the post-employment health plan. So I would like to strike out some language and replace that. It talks about with 10 years of service being required for vacation leave. That is actually not the case. The employee can choose if they leave employment, they can cash out their vacation leave, or they have the option to roll that into the VIBA account. So we'll strike the 10 years of service or more at the city. And then I'd like to replace that they'll have the option to roll over all applicable leave into their PEHP, otherwise referred to as the Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association, which is VIBA. The VIBA account in accordance to section 501c9. So that's really the change I want to make to that policy. Are there any questions for that? So really just matching what we're doing in practice.
Jessica, did this go through the policies and procedures subcommittee?
Yes, yep, last month. So there are some new policies that are also in there, such as the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, just making sure we're complying with that. And then we also added in non-exempt compensatory time in lieu of overtime, just making sure we're in compliance, especially with our auditors when we're putting that into practice. We put it in a policy. Any other questions?
So this was updated from 2021, is that right? Is there a reason why? Was it just a kind of a formality to do an update on this, or?
So what my goal is to go through every chapter within the personnel handbook. And so chapter 8, I brought a few policies forward in July and August about sick leave, FMLA, ADA. So these are the rest of the chapter 8 policies. And then my goal is to go through other chapters kind of as a separate project, if you will. So this is just finishing out chapter 8.
Just getting it all updated?
Yep.
Yep, perfect.
Correct.
Thank you.
Jessica, what's it getting updated to? So what are you using as a guideline to update these?
So I do a combination of things. I look at what other cities are doing. Sometimes it's updates to what we're actually doing in practice. And so prior to me coming to the city, I know that Danny, our city attorney, and Lyle Lutt, they did a lot of work to kind of earmark some things, if you will, and propose some edits. And then I took that and continued researching other policies that cities are doing to find kind of the best solution. And our leadership team has also reviewed this before city council as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Anybody in the public want a chance to talk on this? All right, seeing no more discussion, please vote.
So,
Go ahead.
so if we want to go ahead and go with the amendments that Jessica is talking about, we'll first have to vote on the amendments. So what we'll first need is a motion to amend striking out the language referring to the 10 years of service or more, and replacing language regarding rolling over all applicable leave into post-employment health plan, otherwise referred to as the Voluntary Employment Beneficiaries Association, if that's the route you want to go, as Jessica previously described.
Is that changes from what was already
Yeah,
on
we
here?
already.
Yeah,
we
so
already
that's
made
the
a motion.
so that's the changes that Jessica just described that
That's
she
why we
wanted to
pulled it
make.
off.
That's, yep, so Jessica just described those amendments she preferred to make. So if if that's the route you want to take, we'll first have to vote to amend those items that she just brought forth, if that's the route you want to take. So we would need a motion to amend.
Your Honor, I move that we accept those recommended amendments to this policy.
I'll second that.
So now what we'll do is we'll vote on those amendments.
Any discussion? Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries. So now that those amendments have been approved, now we'll vote and go back to the original item of number 13 and vote on those vote on the approval of this with those amendments.
Got all that?
All of.
Yep, and we've already
We've
have a
already
motion and a
okay, so-
second. Yep.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, we are now on to our regular agenda, item number 16. Need a motion, consideration of approval of an engineering design service contract with Olson's Inc. for the City of Norfolk Civic and Community Center Financing Fund grant to plan for the implementation of the lighting portion of the project for an amount not to exceed $68,500. And I see Candace is here, so,
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second.
all right, Candace, you'll be talking on this.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of background, and then I do have Seth Lange here with Olson. We've also worked very closely with our engineering team on this project. So this contract provides for engineering design services for the implementation of the lighting components of the Illuminate the River Point District grant. So this was a Civic and Community Center Financing Fund grant that we received solely because we have an established creative district here in Norfolk. So the funding year for 2024 restricted these CCCFF funds to communities with certified creative districts. We were fortunate enough to have great partnership between our downtown stakeholders and our creative district representatives. We were able to find components within the strategic plan for the creative district, as well as recent information that we had gotten through a downtown survey, a community survey specific to the downtown. And so that's where really the lighting component and then the other piece of this, the sign, emerged as leading scopes of work. So this contract is going to provide for the three different parts of the lighting. So the first part of the lighting is along Norfolk Avenue, and it's intersection lighting. And so we're going to see those intersections at 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th Street lit up. The second portion is corridor lighting from the River Point Square, and it goes down 3rd Street and then over on Brosh. Then we're going to turn it on to 2nd Street and connect with that pedestrian bridge that the Garys moved down, the railroad bridge. What a big part of this grant application included was we wanted to make a connection between the investments that were happening in the riverfront and Johnson Park with our downtown district. We want to pull people back and forth. So that's that corridor lighting component. And then the third component of it is bright, colorful lighting in our downtown alleyways. And the committee picked a couple specific areas of the alleyways. These are in very close proximity to some community parking or vehicle parking district parking that is made available to the public, that we thought those specific lit areas would provide an added safety element, but also just a fun atmosphere as people are going back and forth from Norfolk Avenue to those parking lots in that back area. So this contract helps us get started with that process. It helps initiate some of those community conversations that have to happen as we look to design this and move it through the process. The consulting fees are paid by the CCCFF grant. I'm looking at, what questions do you have for me as we consider this contract?
So the grant, the portion, I mean, obviously the consulting fees are paid for the grant portion, but what about the actual lighting when that gets developed and puts
Yeah, so
is placed forward?
The lighting component is also a part of the grant. The match for this, we used $85,000 of vehicle parking district funds, so funds that are specifically set aside for that district. And then we looked at different things that were happening in Johnson Park and with the river improvements, and we worked alongside the state of Nebraska to use those projects as our match for these funds. So lighting, I have about $800,000 as a part of the grant that will go to help fund the lighting for this. And then just over $200,000 will go towards this sign that's going to span Norfolk Avenue. And that's gonna be on that 7th, 8th Street, or 8th Street, 9th Street area of the downtown. Any other questions for me?
Candace, we talked about pushing this up Second Street instead of Third Street. Are we still able to do that?
So we're turning onto 2nd Street after we go down Brosh.
Yeah, I know we originally talked about going all the way down to Second because there's such high, we have so much investment at Third Street to actually pull that down to Second Street to help build more proximity downtown. We talked about, I know this was the original thing that you drew up for the application, but I thought we talked about pushing it to Second Street.
So I checked with the state of Nebraska and asked about that change, but my understanding was the 2nd Street was to connect with the pedestrian bridge. A big component of the grant was to connect River Point Square, which was another project that the state of Nebraska also invested in with the river. And
Okay,
so I
so it had to be
think,
tied to that park, you're saying?
so yeah, the
Okay.
park is a big part of that application, and that pull of community members and visitors to and fro.
All right, thank you. And how's this project being paid for, Candace?
So the full grant was for $1,125,000, and that the components laid out here with this engineering contract, consulting fees also for the sign that's going to span Norfolk Avenue, and then the build out for both the sign and the lighting. Well, those are all covered by the grant funds, the CCCFF grant funds.
Okay.
And the $85,000 from the vehicle parking
That's what I was
district, sorry,
Yep. So the VPD is kicking in 85,000.
correct,
And they utilize the investment into Johnson Park as our matching funds
right,
for the grant. Okay.
right. Specifically, we looked at that water feature that was there, the nature playground, the different picnic structures, and then some of the lighting that went on around the trail system. And the state, we really had to look closely at which of those projects hadn't been initiated by the time that we had started this application process, because none of that work could have been done before. And then we had to look at the way the different projects in Johnson Park were funded, because we had a lot of great community partners that came to the table with private funds. We had Keno dollars that we were able to match up with, but we knew that we couldn't match any state-funded projects like our tourism grant and our other CCCFF grant with this. We couldn't match state dollars with state dollars. So we were very, I think, strategic. We appreciated that the state of Nebraska worked with us on that and made that allowance, because otherwise we really wouldn't have had a grant match.
Candace, what is estimated start date and maybe a completion date?
For the lighting component of it?
yeah.
Well, I would love to get started right away, and I think Seth would be on board for that. I would love to see the lighting in place by this fall. I would love to see our downtown Christmas festival have this lighting in place. It's feasible? All right. Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Anybody from the public have anything they want to comment on?
Jim McKenzie, I guess my question is, how is this gonna be maintained? What budget does the maintenance of this come out of? And do we have a plan for how much that maintenance is going to be?
Yeah, so ongoing maintenance for this would be through the vehicle parking district. And I think we would have to take a look at, as things went bad or bulbs burned out or what that was whether it's cost effective to replace that or not. The vehicle parking district has funds that they set aside for extra added amenities that they want within their district. And so that would be the most fitting funding structure for that maintenance.
And I think the vehicle parking district increased their fund by 25%, their budget by 25% this year.
And the reason I asked that question, I mean, this is a $1.125 million project, so, and every time I see festoon lighting, half the bulbs are burned out, and so, it seems like there's gonna be a significant amount of maintenance on, that would be my guess, maybe I'll be wrong, but, I would suggest if the VPD is going to be responsible, that you pass a resolution and state that, because the VPD historically has maintained their parking lots, but about a year ago, we spent $200,000 of chaff money to fix the parking lots, and the VPD used that money that was in the VPD funds for festoon lighting. So what we say doesn't always seem to hold true. So if VPD is truly going to be the maintenance factor of that, I think a resolution needs to be passed to state that, so that it doesn't again fall on the taxpayers. Thank you.
David Jansma. In hindsight, since we're talking about illuminating intersections that we remove stoplights from, maybe she would have planned that a little closer before we put all four-way stop signs in. Having frequently downtown, the intersections are pretty entertaining for pedestrians. And I think maybe we should have put that off. I'm all for lighting the intersections, but maybe we should have thought about that a little closer if something like this comes up again.
Thanks. Seth, would there be any way, would you have any idea what the maintenance plan for something like this could be potentially?
Seth Lang with Olson. We can look at a maintenance plan and see what would happen. Usually what is required, you work with the manufacturer on whatever there's being put out there as far as the power source, the lighting, everything of that sort. That will give you kind of a, I guess, a twilight to how long those materials would last, and that would be provided within the design and with working with the manufacturers on it.
So once we get that design plan and kind of what that maintenance plan looks at, then we could kind of look more further into how those,
Yep.
yeah, with the, working with the vehicle parking district
Yep.
on a annual
And
budget.
I understand that there are certain things that are outside of what we can really design for, but in the grand scheme of things, we can provide some kind of maintenance or provide how long these items should last. So,
That'll be part of the plan once you go through that
Yes.
initial study?
Yep.
Okay.
Seth, are these gonna be probably LED lights, I would assume, so they'd have a 10-year longevity?
it's gonna, I can't tell you that
Okay.
right now. And once we get into it, I would assume that the most efficient, material or lighting that we would use would be what we'd use, but based on what the cost is, and I mean, there's those other factors that are within it as far as cost. We had initially talked about this, when we were talking with the city about this, if, we were looking at these projects and each one of these could actually be split up into separate projects if need be. So if you had like, you do your intersections of fourth, fifth, sixth, or, excuse me, second, third, fourth, fifth would be one, you could be one of your projects, then your third to the bridge would be another project and your alleyway could be another project. If that would have to happen as separate projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Steve, could you speak to a little bit what Jim was talking about when the city paid to overlay the parking lots and why that happened? It just wasn't for no reason. It was along with that Kensington parking lot.
I think more than anything, we're just kind of fixing some, the lack of maintenance in the past. So, I can't speak about why they weren't necessarily maintained historically, but they got to a point where they were unmaintained. Substantial potholing starting to occur. They were becoming safety issues in there.
I'm
So-
talking to the fact, Steve, like when we gave that parking lot away for the Kensington, so the VPD gave that lot away with that Kensington purchase.
That was part of that, and I may
Yeah.
need some other help remembering some of those details, but that was
Yeah.
part of that.
So the VPD did not receive any money for that parking lot to make that transaction happen.
That's correct.
And so the city
That's
said,
correct.
to make that happen, we will give you some sort of reimbursement through redoing the parking lot.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
So where we're at now with this is just approving a contract with an engineer, right? We're not approving money to pay for the lighting.
Yeah, I would think once that Olson
Yeah.
gets back once it gets bid out, we get our,
Yeah, this is
Right.
just a contract for the design.
and they'll give us a maintenance program at that point in time,
Once-
and we'll have a better idea what that's gonna look
Once
like.
design's complete, we'll come back for a request to advertise for bids.
I think that'd be the
And then a bid
appropriate
war.
time to look at how, right, exactly, so, okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, item number 17, need a motion consideration approval awarding a contract to Reynolds Construction LLC of Orleans, Indiana for the Collection Well 14 project for an amount of $6,278,000.
Make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second?
All right, we're in a discussion. Chad's going to discuss this with us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your opportunity on this. Before you is the contract that we received from Reynolds Sons Construction for the Well 14 project. A little background on this project, just a reminder here, this is going to be a one-story building with a 19-foot outside diameter caisson pressed 60 feet in the ground. And then there's going to be 4 12-inch laterals pressed out about 200 feet. This well will produce somewhere between 3,000 and 3,400 gallons a minute, bringing our raw water capacity up to 14.5 million gallons of water. On January 3rd, we received 3 bids. Bid number 1 was Renelson's Construction for $6,278,000. Bid number 2 was from CFC Civil Contractors for $6,800,000. And then bid number 3 was from Velocity Contractors for $7,264,271. The bid that we have before you here is under the contractor's estimate, which was $6.9 million. Renelson's Construction is a company capable of constructing this well. They've done many collector wells up in the South Dakota area. And after review with Black & Veatch and city staff, we recommend awarding the contract for the Well 14 project with Renelson's Construction in the amount of $6,278,000. Any questions?
Yeah, this goes ahead in lines with our plans in the future to like, what, 2040 or 50?
So, yeah, that's correct. With the
Okay.
current modeling that we've done with our master plan, this well should show us with the estimated growth that we have as the factor of the master plan development. This will bring our capacity of that 14.5 million to meet the demands of 2040. Now, we can have some extended growth that we're not forecasting right now, and maybe some industrial load that adds to the community over the next 20 years, which could change that. But currently, right now, this will bring us to that number for 2040.
Thank you.
How soon will this project be started then?
So we, with approval tonight, we'll reach out to them tomorrow with a contract reward. They'll probably give us a date from when they notice to proceed. They'll come back. And then after that, the contract should take about, or project, excuse me, should take about 517 days. So I guess we'll find out from what their schedule is. I would assume probably in the next month, month and a half. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chad, can you tell us how we're paying for this? again?
This will be bonded, and we did increase water rates in October of last year to 6.25% to help pay for the revenue bond for this project.
Are we sticking any revenue in this from reserves or?
No,
This is
no,
all
this will be
bonded?
completely bonded.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Any other discussion? Anybody in the public have anything to say in discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, on to item 18. Need a motion and consideration approval to award a contract to Penrose Construction Company, Inc. of Pender, Nebraska for the collection of well 14 transmission line. The project for amount of $489,341.90.
Your Honor, I move consideration of awarding contract to Penrose Construction.
Second.
Chad will also be up here discussing this with us.
Thank you again. So this here, this contract's for the raw water line to connect the well 14 to the existing well line that we have out there in the well field. This will be approximately a 2,000-foot line, 20-inch diameter ductile steel. We did receive two bids on this one on January 3rd. The first bid that we received from Penrose Construction was for $489,341.90. The second bid we got from Retchins Construction in the amount of $630,931. The bid from Penrose Construction is under the estimated engineer's estimate, which was $1.5 million. Olson's and the city of Norfolk recommend approving a contract with Penrose Construction for the raw water line for well 14 in the amount of $489,341.90.
So you said the initial estimate was 1.5 million?
That is correct.
What was the significant difference in that? What did spec change, or how did that?
So there was no spec change. I think right now we had a really, really competitive market on this raw water line at this particular time. A really hungry, aggressive market, and that was the savings that we had reflected on this project.
That's pretty hungry.
It is. So
Chad, I don't know if you can answer this, maybe this is a Randy question, but you talked earlier how we raised the rates 6.5% to help pay for the bond of the other project, right? And this one seems to be, well, let's say $1 million under engineer's estimate. So theoretically, the increase could pay off this project sooner than what we anticipated. So how does that work with the increase in rates?
Yeah, so what we got, we've got like kind of 3 phases of this overall project. So when we were looking at doing our bonding, the well 14, the raw water line, and the West Plant Improvement Project was in that lower $15 million. And we were looking at bonding all that together when we go ahead and go to the bond company. So with that, this one here came in a lot lower and stuff. We still have observation contract services that we have to do on this and stuff. So I think we're gonna wait and see what everything comes out to. But I still think we're gonna be well under that $16 million.
So it's possible we could pay off a bond sooner, and is it possible that that 6.5% increase goes away, or how does this work?
Yeah, so as we go through the next budget cycle, annually as we go through the budget cycle, and as these projects go out, some come in under, some come in over. So we'll look at our 10-year CIP, and we may end up backing off, or where we may have other projects that we're anticipating revenue bond for. We may back those out just to use a revenue and eliminate the bond on, it might be a project next year, but, so we look at that, we'll look at all the projects that go out this year, how they all came in, is their user revenue fee potentially that was captured, as a function of lower bids, and then as we reassess the 10-year CIP, we adjust what future revenue bonded projects might be. Most likely we would remove some revenue bonds from our overall budget.
Is that something that maybe you'd have more information on by retreat time that you could elaborate on?
I would say yes. That's a pretty easy thing to kind of elaborate on and go over that 10-year budgeting process. Because we actually have a 20-year revenue model that we project for the next 20 years on.
And just to clarify, it was a 6.25% increase. So I don't know if I said 6.5 or not, so.
Either way, increase.
So, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Anybody from the public want to state something, anything?
Jim McKenzie, just for clarification, was there not multiple 6.25% increases over multiple years? That is correct, Jim. Last year was the first 6.25. And so again, as these projects come in and we have actual numbers, the futures, what we do this year, maybe this year goes down to 4.5 or something based on how those bids actually come in. What was your previous projection on how many years of 6.25% increases? My recollection is it was 3 years at 6.25. Okay, thank you. I just think it's important to know. Thanks.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Right on to item 19. Need a motion in consideration of approval of an agreement for professional engineering services with JEO Consulting Group, Inc. for the 2025 bridge inspections for a total of $8,000.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of the agreement.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go into discussion here. Anna, I believe you're going to be leading this today.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'm bringing before you a professional engineering services contract with JEO and the amount of $8,000. So JEO Consulting Group has in the past done all of our bridge inspections. I was trying to look back at how far back they've been doing it, but as long as Kelly remembers, and I know Kelly's been here for a long time. So we have 18 bridges that get inspected on a 2-year cycle, and then one bridge that gets inspected on a 48-month cycle. So there are 18 bridges that need to be inspected this year, and so we would like to get contract with them to perform those inspections for us. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to.
What is the bridge that only gets inspected every 48 months, and why is that different than the other ones?
So the one that gets inspected every 48, let me see. I had this on here. I don't remember off the top of my head which one. Is it
East Norfolk Avenue Bridge, probably.
Is it? Because it's
I would
more.
guess it's East Norfolk Avenue Bridge, Councilman. The reason for that is probably the newer the bridge, the better the condition rating on the bridge, the less frequently it has to be inspected. So where most of our bridges, obviously, 90-some% are just older, and so they're in a different condition rating that is required federally to be inspected every 2 years. And that is a federal, that boils down to us from the U.S. Department of Transportation, that frequency.
That Norfolk Avenue Bridge, I know is just used quite a bit, so that was kind of one of my questions on that. Thank you.
Yeah, when they come through and do the inspections, and it's documented on the DOT, there's a website where they have to document all of the bridge inspections. And then you can go on that website and you can look for all the condition report and everything for the bridges in town.
What do we get back for the inspection? Is it pictures and some sort of deterioration chart, or how's it work? What's it look like once we get information back? Does that make sense? I mean, I assume there's
Yes.
a rating of some sort.
Yes, it's a kind of a standardized federal form. Each state might tweak it a little bit, but it's generally a standardized federal form. There is a condition rating that comes back. There are photographs that come back of the structure of the deck, the bearing pads, the abutments, the piers. So it's some of it is some of it's very narrow definitions, maybe acronyms in there that are indicating certain types of condition. You'll see, I can't think of the name of the condition that comes back in there. I can't think of it, but sometimes, it's engineer's language, and sometimes you'll see those, you'll see something in there structurally deficient, might be a rating. That just means it's under maybe a 75 or something like that is considered structurally deficient. When they get down to some percentage at 50%, that's when they might, that's when we'd close a structure. So you'll see different terminology and stuff like that.
So is there
the
like
actual report's probably 2 pages, maybe 3 pages.
There's like a baseline set by the state or the feds, or how's that work?
It's set by the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Okay.
Kind of that.
I believe they have a
That structural
standard
category.
form that needs to be filled out for the DOT.
Yeah.
So it's the same inspection form.
I'd be happy to send one to you. You can see what that looks like.
I remember going over it a couple of years ago, but I just couldn't recall what we get back. So if you want to send something, that's perfectly fine.
And since JEO's been doing our bridge inspections, the same individual has been doing those inspections, so they're familiar with where everything's at here in town. They're familiar with, what they're looking for, what kind of deterioration they're looking for compared to previous years. So.
Do we know if any bridges from annually, since this is an annually, is that any of them need to be really probably consider to start putting on the CIP to start replacing because of these conditions that they may be in?
Probably the most significant one is Norfolk Avenue over the flood control levee. And that is in our CIP for either a deck rehab or potentially even a full deck replacement. I can't remember exactly where it is. I think 2029, 2030, in that time frame. Here about 5 years ago, we did some structural rehab on several bridges, North First Street, Benjamin Avenue over the flood control. I think Elm Avenue over here we did several improvements on. So those really kind of caught us up for the most part. There might be some little deck spalling here or there that we need to get out there and do some work on, but otherwise we're in really pretty good shape, aside from Norfolk Avenue.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Anna? Any more discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, on item number 20, consideration of ordinance number 5914, creating a water extension district number 130, which generally provides for the extension of the water main at 37th Street and Prospect Avenue North, approximately 1,275 feet to the north property line of 610 North 37th Street.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5914.
Second.
Any discussion? Well, Anna and Chad, looks like you're both going to be discussing this, or one of the two?
I'll start.
Okay.
I was gonna have Val bring up exhibit here. So this first, no, she's pulling it up from her computer. I just have my notes. So this first agenda item, it's kind of a series of items we have on the agenda tonight. So this first one is for consideration of creating an ordinance for a water district creation, water district number 130. And this is along North 37th Street. So this water district is from North 37th Street, from Prospect Avenue north about 1,275 feet. So on the on the exhibit that she has there, so we're looking at the bottom portion where it's hatched out there. Those properties would be in this district. So this would be the location of that water line for the district. So this proposed 12-inch water line that would go up along North 37th Street has been, was identified in 2008 in the water master plan. And then soon after that, it was put in to be part of the capital improvement plan for installing the 12-inch water line along 37th Street from Prospect up to Benjamin. The water line, I know right now we're just talking about this one section for
time, we're going to go
the
through 4 of
decision.
these here, so
Yep.
maybe can you just go ahead and explain sewer water at this time for all 4, so everybody can see
Sure
what
can,
you're
yep.
talking about?
Yep,
Okay,
that'd be great. Yep, I sure can. So the water district would be on that lower end with the dashed. The extension of the water line would continue north up to Benjamin. That's that solid line. So the importance of putting this line is for water quality, to close the loop for the water line that ends at Prospect and again at Benjamin Avenue. By installing this line, we'll be able to switch these lines to a different pressure zone, so there'll be higher water pressure in this area Right now, there's some low water pressures in this area. It'll create service for fire, and then it'll, connect everybody, whoever's connecting to the line will have city water. So the water quality issues that they're currently having will go away. So currently, there's a few properties down there that are experiencing some water quality issues. So they've had some issues with nitrates, and some of their wells are old enough that they'll probably fail within 5 years or so, just based on the age and the condition of these wells. So this proposed district would encompass 5 properties along the east side of 37th Street. And then the west side, and the city would incur some costs along the west side of the project as part of that district. The west side of 37th Street is primarily agriculture, so it's an ag deferred property. If that ever gets developed and they connect to the water, they'll have to pay the connection fee at that time. So these 5 parcels, they will be assessed through a water district. Engineer's estimate for this district is about $270,000 for construction and engineering. This cost would be assessed over 20 years to those properties. And then each property would be assessed based off of the front footage and off of the area of their property, since they're all a little bit different in their areas and their front footage. So we currently have this water line budgeted in the CIP for 25 and 26, totaling about $1,050,000. Let's see. Sewer district is the same. Same area for the sewer district, so your green dotted line there would be your sewer district, and that would connect from Prospect north to these properties. We've had several of these properties reached out to the city specifically for water, and also interested in sewer service as well for future development. I know Shepherd of the Peace Evangelical Church and Granville Custom Homes had reached out to the city back in 2021. There was an open house last summer to talk about these projects, and the individuals were there during that public meeting to ask questions, and everybody has been reached out to. All these property owners have been talked to by our city water department staff, and they were all, in favor of being part of this district. So the sewer district would be essentially the same as the water district, the same 5 parcels. They'd be charged an assessment based off of front footage and area of the properties. The estimated cost for this district is about $176,000. So do you want to do these, should we go back to do the
We'll just go
the
back.
water district?
We'll just go back. Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
show on the map where everything was, so you didn't have to
Yep.
come back each
And
time to
then,
do that.
right, and the Mach 1 sewer and water districts up there, that's kind of a separate water and sewer district based on some development that's gonna be happening up there, so.
Okay, any questions? Do we have any landowners here in that area that would like to come up and talk? Any other people, anybody in the public that wants to speak upon this?
Jim McKenzie, I guess on these, how much of the cost are we assessing and how much are we absorbing?
I can answer that. Sorry, I left my papers up here. So for the water district, there is some oversized cost that's non-assessable. That's estimated to be about $37,745. The abutting property is about $121,079. And then the assessable property is $104,877. Keeping in mind the abutting property that's non-accessible at this point is on the west side of 37th Street and would be charged connection fees when they connect to water.
Okay, so less than half is assessed, and then the city absorbs that cost until that property gets developed, and we don't know how many years until that property gets developed, and we just carry that cost, okay? And then you talked about another water line that goes up north, I guess that other blue line that goes up north.
Right, so the water line, essentially the whole project would be the water line extension all the way from Prospect to Benjamin Avenue. We're creating the district for that southern portion. But the water line is going in, or extending it all the way up at this time because of the need for that extension of the water line. It's been identified in the CIP to run that water line along 37th Street. And since there has been some property owners down here that have asked the city about getting water service for their developments down there, we moved forward to create the water district in this portion down here. Anybody else, when we are extending that water line to the north, if there are other property owners that want to join in, into a district along that northern part, we can create the district at that time, but it would be connection fees if they're not part of that district.
So that entire $1 million, none of that is assessed?
Correct. That's in our CIP as user fees. So the project is driven by the need to get the water main up 37th Street. Because we're putting that in, we reached out last summer to have a conversation to say, hey, we're putting this in. If we create a district for you, you have 20 years through an assessment to pay that versus your well fails in 5 years, 10 years, it's a lump sum cost. So we presented that option to those landowners in the south just based on the history of contact from several of those landowners that were expressing a desire to connect. Up through, as you go north of where that district is, the Porsche Place, Rolling Hills area, that would all, I don't see really any of those properties connecting to the transmission main. So this is a transmission main project, which generally we put in a transmission main on user revenue. The Rolling Hills area, there would be a future project internally to put run water mains internally, and they would most likely connect into the water mains in Porsche Place or Rolling Hills. We did reach out to the property owners up on the northeast side there. There's, I don't remember, four or five property owners. So they did reach out to them, just have a conversation, see if there was any interest in a district there. My understanding is there was no interest by those property owners in creating a district for connection. When we do put the main through up in that area, there would be connections. There would be the curb stops would go in place for a future connection for those particular properties. And like Anna said, there's we have a million, I think it's $1,050,000 in our CIP to get this transmission main in on 37th Street.
So out of the $1.3 million roughly with the 12-inch line and the district, we're assessing about 104,000 of that.
The total project, we anticipated $1 million.
Well,
Correct.
oh, I thought the top water line was $1 million and then the
No.
district was another 300.
No, the
okay.
top water line ends up, we calculate about 548,000 estimate. And then that southern portion was about 275,000.
Okay,
For the water.
so out of the million, we're assessing 10%, 104,000.
Correct.
Okay,
And again, as a transmission main, generally, we put transmission mains in under user revenue.
but yet you were assessing the southern portion of that.
Correct. I mean, since those 5 properties would be a direct connection, so we're giving them, because we're coming through, we've had historical interest in some of those properties. We're saying, we're coming through, you can either connect and pay a lump sum, or you can connect through an assessment. So we're the assessment's just an option to help reduce the impact on the property owners. Gives them a time to pay that off versus a lump sum.
Okay. How about on the sewer, how much of that is being assessed versus the cost?
So the sewer district, the non-accessible is 98,238, and the accessible portion is 77,987.
Okay. Thank you. It looks like we're putting a lot out for a couple properties there. I understand the need for some, but gosh, the ratepayers have got to absorb 90% of that. So, thank you.
Was this, but us connecting from Prospect to Benjamin, there's a benefit to our water and sewer system the way it sits today.
Yeah, I can have Chad come up, he can talk a little more about
Yeah.
that if you'd like.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, there's the quality benefit to the system, but as
There you go.
we grow, it also puts the infrastructure in place for growth as growth continues to the west. And so it's, that's a little bit of it. It's
But
also-
right now, the way it sits is we were deadheading our water and it just came to an end.
Yes,
And that was a deficit to what our water system is. By this, we will improve our water and our sewer system, and by doing this, and these
Yep.
these 5 properties are along, because we're gonna be right there doing this, right? Correct?
Yep, and we got a little area there, Silver Fox area, that cul-de-sac you see off to that area there. We got a little bit lower water pressures there, and we've got a neighborhood agreement, a user agreement there for those properties, that they're aware that the pressure's around that 40 to 42 PSI. This system here, bringing that down from Benjamin Avenue down to feed that area, will bring their pressures up to that 65 to 70 PSI. It also brings redundancy. One of the biggest things what we always want to have in a water system is redundancy. We have a water main go down for a repair. We've got to have water still feeding that neighborhood as much as we can. And this will bring that redundancy to it and also improve fire flow for fire protection.
Chad, do you know what the pressure you need at a hydrant is?
What's that?
What the pressure you need at a fire hydrant is and what
So,
it is up there?
we got to maintain 30 PSI for fire protection.
So basically, Chad, what you're telling me, we're bringing this system comparable to the rest of the city, or the majority of the rest of the city.
That is correct.
Even though it was kind of presented that we were, that the rest of the city's not gaining anything from it, they are.
Yeah.
We're getting
And-
everybody on an equal playing ground that way.
And this is the reason why it was identified in the master plan in 2008. When we do that modeling and stuff, this is one of the areas that was identified. And since we had some experience, or had some individuals there that shown interest us bringing us the water there, that's why we got the project ahead of you guys right now.
Any other questions? Anyone else? All right, seeing none, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry, short title, please.
An ordinance creating Water Extension District Number 130 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, establishing the outer boundaries of the district, designating the size, location, and terminal points, referring to the plans, specification, and engineer's estimate in connection therewith, and to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance. All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5914 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'd move that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third reading. So that we can move it forward.
All right, any discussion? Anybody in the audience need discussion there? All right, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5914 carries on second and third.
Right, on to item number 21, consideration of ordinance number 5915, creation of sanitary sewer extension district number 256, which generally provides for the extension of a sanitary sewer main at 37th Street and Prospect Avenue North, approximately 1,297 feet, to the north property line at 610 North 37th Street.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5915.
Second.
All right, Anna, you're back at
Okay,
it.
I'm back, I'm still here, not going anywhere. So this sanitary sewer extension district would be in that same area I showed you on the bottom part of that map to extend an 8-inch sanitary sewer line from Prospect North to the north property line, or probably wouldn't go all the way to the north property line of 610 North 37th, but that district would incorporate all of those 5 properties. Again, with those 5 properties, they'll be assessed based on area and front footage. It'll be a 20-year assessment. And again, the city would have some non-assessable costs to carry on this as well. Is there any questions on the sewer district?
Any questions from audience? All right, short title, please.
An ordinance creating sanitary sewer extension district number 256 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, establishing the outer boundaries of the district, designating the size, location, and terminal points, referring to the plans, specifications, and engineer's estimate in connection therewith, and to provide for when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance. All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5915 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules and pass on second and third.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5915 carries on second and third.
Right, moves on to item number 22, consideration of ordinance 5916, creating water extension district number 132, which generally provides for the extension of a water main approximately 440 feet from Mach 1 Drive from 36th Street to 37th Street.
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5619.
No.
Sorry. Huh? 5617.
5916.
That's what I meant, 5916. What did I say the first time? 50,
You didn't say that.
I'm dyslexic, huh? 5916.
All right, Anna, go ahead.
This, so we're looking at the water district along Mach 1. So there was property on the south side of Mach 1, just east of 37th Street, that recently sold and was replatted for residential development, and that is getting split into 6 individual lots. So they had requested to get water to those properties. So we'll extend it from the northeast side of 36th Street, where our water line is currently, and extend it west to 37th Street to tie in with the other water line that'll be coming north along 37th Street. There will be 7 properties in the district, so 6 of them are on the south side. That 7th is on the north side. Val, that bigger property, yes, right there, would be part of the district as well. So that property currently has water. They connected to water, but there was an agreement with the property owners in, Val, do you have that pulled up? I was gonna pull that up, but I don't remember the year off the top of my head. 92, okay, back in 92, that they would pay an assessment or a connection fee, assessment fee, the assessment fee, when a water line did come through that area and extend it out to 37th Street. So that would be parcel number 7.
Is it the same owner from 1992?
No.
No, okay.
So
It just went with the property.
Different property owner that, the agreement does run with the property, run with the land. That agreement is on file down at the county. We've spoken with the property owner, about this. So the water line coming through there, we are assessing upfront footage on these properties. The city will have, some non-assessable cost for the property on the northwest corner of 37th and Mach 1, since they were already, they already paid their assessment and connection fee, whichever it was, when they connected. So, is there any questions on the waterline district?
So Anna, these 6 will be assessed?
7.
7, they'll be assessed?
Yeah, they'll be assessed based off of linear foot of front footage of their property. I believe. Or did we do let me double check that. Just a second. Yeah, based off the linear foot. The estimated construction cost for this district is $112,437.
And what percentage of that total is assessed?
It was close, I think it was about 2/3. It was like 75% that was, that will be assessed based on the front footages.
Okay. I noticed on that first one that we talked about, 5914, that was assessed based on the front linear footage, but it was also the size of the lot was taken into consideration. Do you do that here? Or
We did not do this here. We didn't think it would really be a value to the property owners to do it that way, because these are square lots and they're not some kind of strange shape or a flag lot. Like in the southern portion, those lots were different sizes. One was a kind of a flag lot, so it didn't have very much of a front footage. So this one, we did just the front footage, linear foot.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification.
I did, Councilman, I did bring up the calculations. And I've got the wrong spreadsheet. I don't have I thought I'd be able to give you the exact number in terms of the non-assessable, but the non-assessable part is that just that one little portion of the lot that's right up against 36th Street. It's about 175 foot. It would be the corner of 36th and Mach 1. So as that portion of the water main that passes the frontage of that property would be the portion that's non-accessible.
That lot is 120 foot
what it
wide,
is?
and then the street wide away, right of way of 60 feet to get across 36th Street would be non-accessible.
Do you want me to take it while she's presenting some of the other, do you want me to take a minute and bring that up?
Or any further discussion? Anyone else have any questions for us? All right, seeing none, short title, please.
An ordinance creating Water Extension District Number 132 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, establishing the outer boundaries of the district, designating the size, location, and terminal points, referring to the plan specification and engineer's estimate in connection therewith, and to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance. All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5916 carries on first reading.
I'll take another stab at this. Make a motion that we pass ordinance number 5916 on second and third.
I'll second.
It's just,
Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5916 carries on second and third.
Right, on to item number 23, consideration of ordinance number 5917, creating a sanitary sewer extension districts number 257, which generally provides for the extension of a sanitary sewer main approximately 400 feet from 36th Street and Mach 1 Drive West to 37th Street.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance number 5917.
Second.
Motion is second, going to some discussion here. Anna, please.
So the sewer extension district would be for an 8-inch sewer line that would extend along the south side of Mach 1 west to the first lot there from 37th Street, labeled as 1. The total cost is estimated to be $97,350. The non-accessible portion would be that lot on the north side, the 120 foot, and then that other 60 foot of, about 60 foot that would go into the right-of-way east of lot number 6. So this district will be primarily made up of the properties that the one developer owns and will be building residential on. Also based off of, these were assessed by lots.
Now,
Right, so we
that lot
keep
to
them as
that
lots.
lot to the north would have an opportunity to hook up in the future, correct?
They are already connected.
They're already connected, okay.
Yep, they're already connected, and I believe the gentleman on the north, yep, they're connected as well. Any questions?
Any further discussion? Any discussion from anybody? Right, seeing none, please vote.
Short title.
Or, I'm sorry, short title, please.
An ordinance creating sanitary sewer extension district number 257 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, establishing the outer boundaries of the district, designating the size, location, and terminal points, referring to the plan, specification, and engineer's estimate in connection therewith, and to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance. All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5917 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion, a second, in discussion. Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5917 carries on second and third.
Right on to item number 24, consideration of approval of an engineering contract with Murray Engineering for the design phase services for 37th Street water and sanitary sewer main extensions for the Water Extension District number 130 and Sanitary Sewer Extension District number 256. Projects located at 37th Street and Prospect Avenue North to 610 North 37th Street for the amount not to exceed $52,000.
Make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second.
All right, we'll have some discussions on this, Anna.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying with me, Mayor and Council. So the engineering contract that's before us is for McLaury Engineering to do the design for the water line from Prospect Avenue north to Benjamin Avenue, and the sewer line from Prospect up to that northern part of 610 North 37th Street. This also includes the, no, that does not. So for the water along 37th Street for both of the districts on the south side, an amount of $52,000. So it's broken out, the 37th Street north of the 610 North 37th will be 18,400. The 37th Street for the district would be 13,800. And then I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Then the very first one, 18,400 for the sewer, 13,800 for the water district, and then another 13,800 for the remainder of the water. So they will be doing the design for both the water and sewer, and then I anticipate we'll be bidding those at the same time as well for the project. That will save some money in the long run by having the one mobilization and one contractor putting both of those in for the whole property, or for the whole section of 37th Street. Any questions?
How was the McLaury Engineering chosen?
McLaury, we've worked with them on several of our past water and sewer districts. They're well informed of, putting together these water and sewer plans and their civil design. So we've kind of stuck with, we've leaned towards them to use them for these kinds of contracts for these water line districts. Especially on some of the, the water districts like on North Highway 81, some of the smaller water lines and water districts such as that.
Yeah, we've also seen just historically pretty good rates from them. You see at the 52,000 here, that's roughly 5% or so of engineering costs on the project. That's pretty good when it comes to engineering costs.
We've
had really good experience. They're local. We've had good experience with them on we've kind of been testing the water with them here the last few years. But Georgia, Square Turn, 15th Street, those are some gap paving projects they did, and then they just did Michigan Avenue and 8th Street, as well as I think Anna mentioned the water district on North 81, and have performed quite well.
And we've
pretty good fee.
Yeah, we've built a good working relationship with McLaury here in town. Nick Hoffman from McLaury Engineering is here if you have any specific questions for him as well.
Also, just with McLaury, Olson, JEO here, there is a function of just spreading the work out amongst those local consultants. Again, we are cognizant of what that general percentage of fee is on those, but trying to keep the dollars that we spend local as best we can.
Any further discussion? Anybody else like to ask any questions? Right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
On item number 25, consideration approval of an engineering contract with McLeary Engineering for the design phase of Mach 1 Drive water and sewer, sanitary sewer main extensions for the Water Extension District number 113 and the Sanitary Sewer Extension District 257, projects located on Mach 1 Drive from 36th Street to 37th Street for the amount not to exceed $13,500. And Anna, again.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anna?
Okay, last one on this topic. Another contract with McLaury Engineering for the design services for the Mach 1 sewer and water districts in an amount not to exceed $13,500.
Any questions? Anyone else have any questions? All right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Right, item
Thank you
number.
for your time.
Thank you, Anna. I think that was the last one you're on, so. Right. Need a motion to adopt the consideration of resolutions number 2025-7, amending the city expedited review process for certain tax increment financing projects to reflect changes set forth by LB 537 passed by the Nebraska Legislature June 6, 2023.
Your Honor, I move consideration of resolution 2025-7.
Second. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Randy, you'll be leading this discussion, looks like.
Yes. Main change reflected in this resolution is the elimination requirement that the holder of the TIF note be the owner of record of the property. That was awkward and required additional provisions in our expedited review process to make it work, and we've eliminated those provisions in the current resolution. LB 531 made a number of other changes. One of the things it did was allows the city council to set an annual limit on the number of expedited review projects. Since we're not getting inundated with this, I did not put anything in the resolution to set an annual limit. It eliminates the requirement that building and other permits be submitted with the redevelopment plan. It also allows denial of projects inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Before, pretty much if it met the requirements for expedited review, we had to approve them. It also provides that the amount of the TIF indebtedness can't exceed the lesser of the agreed upon cost of the project. There are incremental taxes expected to be generated over 15 years. And finally, it allows cities that have authorized an expedited review process or micro-TIF to revoke that election at any time. To answer any questions.
Randy, have you seen any micro-TIF applications?
Yes, we've had maybe a handful of them, none of which met the requirements for micro-TIF for one reason or another.
Any other discussion? Anybody from the public?
Jim McKenzie, I'm just curious, this update was from legislation that was passed a year and a half ago. I'm just wondering why now? Is there anything that's driving this or something anticipated that's driving this?
No, there isn't. If we would have had a project that came forward during that time, would have expedited review change. But it got on the to-do list and finally worked its way up to the top.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution number 2025-7 is adopted.
Right, on to item number 27, consideration of ordinance number 5918, amended section 2-26 of the city code to amend procedures related to filling mayor and/or city councilman vacancies.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All right, we have motion and a second. Going to discussion here. Danny, looks like you're taking the lead on this, so.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the ordinance before you tonight is ultimately an amendment to Section 2-26 of the City Code. This changes how we fill vacancies for the positions of mayor as well as city council people. So we attempted to do this back in December. That version looked quite a bit different than this one does today. For purposes of just a really quick overview to get everyone up to speed in terms of how we got to where we are, just a really quick historical background as this, the reason for this came about. So obviously we had a very contested election back in November. All of the seats that were on the ballot in November were all very closely contested. There was races and everyone, nobody ran uncontested. So following that race and the results of which resulted in Mayor Clausen, we didn't have much conversation about what the vacancy process would look like because it's never been an issue for the city of Norfolk since this, the first iteration of this was passed in 1986, almost 40 years ago. As the month of November came to a close, we started to hear rumors that there could be as many as 10 to 25 applicants. And so it was at that time that really there was a push to look at how the process comes to pass, what we have done historically, and it was then that the decision was ultimately made to move from what we had, which was a 2-week window, to fill the seat to a 4-week window. And when that was we attempted to do that in December, that failed, and so we were stuck with the 2-week window.
Danny, can you speak? I'm getting some people can't hear very well.
That's usually not a problem, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we realized very quickly that it was going to be an issue because when the attempt to move to the 4-week window as reflected in state law, when we tried to do that and that failed, we were stuck with the 2-week window. And what that means is from the time that the vacancy was announced, which was at the first meeting in December, we had 2 weeks to fill that spot. Now, first of all, it's a 7-day window that we have in our code, so that took 1 full week away. And then how our agendas work and the finalization of our agendas between the time that we got applications back, that 1-week window, and the time that the agenda had to be finalized, we had about 48 hours to fill the seat. And what that means in our current city code is that you have to have a special meeting. And so that was very, very difficult because we received 12 applicants and all of those, all those individuals were qualified. They all were from the proper ward. They were all registered voters. And so it made that process very, very difficult. And when the discussions were had about how we were going to fill that, originally, we had some of you on the council that were not able to drop everything for a very long and extended period special meeting to interview everybody, because from the beginning, Mayor Clausen had said that he wanted it to be a transparent process. That was communicated multiple times. Our efforts to move to that failed when it was voted down by this body in December. And so looking at the next best possible way to fill that seat as transparently as possible without having an open meeting, because some people were not able to do that in short order. We had some illness, we had a slew of things that created challenges for us within a 48-hour to 72-hour time frame. So what was decided then was that we'd look at a subcommittee to go through this process, this interview process, and it would be the senior member from each ward. Well, we quickly came to realize that because we were down to 7, 4 was a quorum, so it wasn't possible to have a subcommittee with the senior member from each board, from each ward. So then it was just determined that the 3 senior sitting members on the council would be part of that subcommittee. The subcommittee happened, those names were brought forward, and that's how we ended up with Councilman Lange. So that's a very quick rundown of how we got to where we are. So since that time, we've had a lot of meetings, we've had a lot of conversations. We have some people in the audience that reached out that had very strong opinions on this, and so they wanted to be part of the change. Everybody agreed we wanted to change this ordinance. What we had wasn't working for us. It doesn't meet state law, and it's almost 40 years old. So that's what you have before you tonight. So I'll go through these changes just so everybody understands them. And these did come out of a subcommittee meeting, just so everyone is aware. So those that participated
I'm going to interrupt you real quick, though. That subcommittee meeting, I think was a very good subcommittee. We interacted. Rick Benson sitting out here tonight, he was the one who brought this forward. We had the opportunity to sit with him and have a good conversation. I think that is a good part of the, how city politics work, or how city policies work. You obviously have some issues with some citizens come forward, and ultimately it makes you address those issues. And I think working through some of this, we've had some good discussions, ultimately because, the discussions we've had prior to this. So I think the process is working. Now it's just a matter of, seeing where we move forward with this, so.
Yes.
Danny, before you go any further, just to clarify something you just said, what we have now is, what ordinance we have now, is it a legal ordinance? Does it meet the requirements of the state?
It's legal, yes.
Okay.
So in terms of how this ordinance tries to change how we fill vacancies now. So when it comes to a vacancy in the office of the mayor, what will happen under the proposed ordinance is that if less than a year of the previous mayor's term is remaining, then the council president will fill that role. If more than a year is remaining, then it will go to a special election. And that is for the mayor seat. In terms of a city council person, similarly, if more than 1 year of the previous councilman's term remains, a successor will be elected at a special election for the balance of the previous councilman's unexpired term. So that's if it's more than a year remaining. If it's less than a year, it will be a similar process as we have it currently. There will be notice given. There will be a 7-day window within which to apply for that seat. And then it says the mayor and city council shall interview any and all interested and qualified persons who have applied to fill such vacancy at the regular or special meeting required to be called. So everybody will have an interview of the candidates that are qualified, that apply for that seat. And then that window, one big change, the biggest change that I think everybody kind of agrees is the most important, there will be a 4-week window. So previously we'd had a 2-week window. It's not practical. State law provides for a 4-week window. So from the date the announcement of the vacancy, there will be 4 weeks within which to fill it. And you can fill it at either a special election or a special meeting or the regularly scheduled meeting. So before it said we had to have a special meeting. Now we would have the option of filling it by either a special meeting or just at the next one of the next 2 regular meetings, because that generally will fall within that 4-week window. So I know it's a lot to take in there. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. And
Danny, you had a comment early on about our current didn't follow, I guess, the state law or state regulations, I guess. Is that just the 4-week and 2-week, or is there something else in here that I guess differs, or with these changes, what else, I guess, is the same as what the state requires?
So the state does not require what we have traditionally had within our city code. So again, this is written almost 40 years ago. Since that time, the only thing that's required within state law is that, I mean, if there's a vacancy in the office of the mayor, the city council president fills it. And if there's a vacancy in the office of a city council person, then the mayor suggests the name, and then the city council by majority vote has to bring that person in, has to vote that person in order for them to fill that vacancy. If it doesn't happen during the first vote, then you wait till the next meeting and the mayor proffers a different name, and you keep going at that second meeting until you fill it. That is what state law provides, and so, as well as the 4-week window, right? And so that, back when we tried to hurry and change our city code section back in December, it was kind of a bare bones reiteration, if you will, of what state law said. Based on subsequent meetings and conversations and feedback, that's how we ended up at this ordinance that we're at today, because of the concern with having elected officials just pick who they want to be in the spot, as opposed to having a special election or having a process where if we are picking a city council person, there's more than a year left of the term. There was feedback from both citizens and some elected officials that they would prefer it go to a special election as opposed to the normal statutory process. Now, what we're doing here is not illegal. It's just not required in state law. And what state law does say is that in lieu of anything laid out in state law, which is what I said before, that kind of bare bones provision, you may have a special election. But this has taken it a lot further. If it's more than a year of a vacancy for either office, it goes to a special election with what is proposed before you here tonight.
So really, on the one, what we had before, we were actually allowed to have up to 4 weeks, even though it wasn't in our city code. If our city code was 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks, we could have had up to 4 weeks.
No, and that's a great question. Great clarification. So if we, like what we can do in our state law, so we could have gone tighter. So like the 2-week window to fill it quicker, that's okay. So that's why we had to follow, because it was more restrictive. What we couldn't have done is go from a 4-week statutory process to a 6-week statutory process, because ultimately the state wants it filled in no more than 4 weeks. So we can't expand that timeline, but it has been condensed. And that's why that was the major goal with attempting to change it in December, because we knew, we looked at our timeline, we looked at, hearing about having a dozen applicants or more. We knew we would run into exactly what we ended up running into. And so we're trying to fix that here. But what was proposed in December is much, much different than what's here. That was a bare bones reflection of what's in state law. This is incorporating additional feedback that we've kind of garnered since the original ordinance in December that we proposed, if that makes sense.
Danny, my question on this is, what's the timeline then for the special election?
And that's a good question. So the special election is, it's a process, right? So it's about, I would say, approximately a 3-month process, and it ultimately follows the Election Act. And within that, it's a process that's really worked out a lot between our city clerk, Kylie, and the county clerk, Ann Pruse. And so once we do that, the resolution before the city council, that generally comes first. Then there's a period, and there's a form that candidates would have to fill out. Then that's when the window kind of starts. So it has to be held on the first Tuesday following the second Monday of a selected month. However, if it's an even numbered year, we're very strongly, you can't do like half the months of the year, right? And I can read you that law if you want that, but it's very specific because you don't want it to interfere with a primary or a general. And then, so you go through that process of the resolution. The county clerk has to work with the Secretary of State, and there's a kind of a tight deadline on that to make sure that everything lines up and that the Secretary of State gives it the stamp of approval. And then the special election has to be certified by Kylie, our city clerk, to the county clerk on or before the 8th Friday before the election. So this is a lot to take in, but basically we're talking about a firm 2-month window. But that does not take into effect the resolution. That adds on a little bit. It doesn't take into effect giving a period of time for folks to apply. And so we're looking at, I would say, anywhere between 3 and a 4-month process. 4 is, we'd like to be conservative. I would say probably 4. Could we do it in 3? Perhaps that's ultimately something too that we work with Ann at the county. She does it by mail-out ballot. So when we've talked about doing this in the past, special elections for certain things, Ann has made it very clear that she prefers the mail-out. So it would be a mail-out process. In terms of cost, because I know that's going to come up, for one ward, if we're talking about a council person, it's approximately, as of right now, around $12,000. If it's gonna be a mayoral election, a special election, you're closer to that $50,000 for the mail out. And those prices obviously will inflate each passing year.
So then this year, the best case scenario would have been to have the special election held in March? Or February, I guess, would have been
So
the
it would
best
have been,
case.
yeah, so as I believe it to have unfolded, it would be something where that would have been within the 2-week window of the vacancy that we would have opted to do the special election. That would have kind of started the ball rolling, so probably March, early April, yeah.
And then what are the ramifications to the council by only seating 7 that entire time?
It changes, it just changes the numbers. It makes things more complicated probably from a subcommittee standpoint, from making sure, when you're talking about, a lot of times we have to do things by simple majority, but when you get into a super majority, those things are different when you have one less sitting person. But beyond that, we wouldn't have any legal issues. It just would be, it would be a few months of, difficulties in terms of getting the right numbers in case one of you are sick or one of you decides to go on vacation. It's always harder when we have a smaller number than when you start one short anyways. It would probably complicate things just a little bit.
Thank you, Danny, appreciate it.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, so if somebody has 1 year left, it's saying we would go to a special election?
Yes.
And it would take 3 to 4 months to go through that process, to spend that kind of money for somebody to have maybe 8 months?
Yes.
So, Danny, this is kind of a loaded question, but, so you said this ordinance was started in 1986.
Yes.
To bring it to 2024, that's 38 years. How many people have been appointed in 38 years and we've never ran into any of this problem? Do you have any idea how many people that would be?
Well, it would be, it would be a good number of people, but, it has never been to our records. We've searched through everything, and we've searched our hard files in my office, and I have somebody that's been employed there for approximately 25 years. We don't know of any issue where any time where this has ever been an issue that we really know of, unless I can't recall something. No, it's not come up.
Thanks.
I was in the subcommittee. I can certainly appreciate the need for a special election for, 2.5 years. I did bring up 18 months too, just to get to that point of under a year seems a little much. It could be, 7 or 8 months left. So I guess in my opinion, it seems kind of like a year is a little bit too low. I wouldn't mind hearing everyone else's comments, but, that's not very efficient to have one representative for 4 months, not have 2. That seems like a lot of work for one representative, and it could be a very busy time. We've had a lot of times where one rep will get a lot of calls, a lot of phone calls. And so to have 2 reps, it seems more important to me than going under a year. So I'd be okay with having a special election, but I think we need to go back and look at the amount of time for a special election.
Danny, you mentioned earlier that the state actually wants this vacancy filled within 4 weeks.
That would be my assumption based on the fact that since when we originally passed this in 1986, it was a 2-week window. Since that time, they've increased that. So that kind of tells me they understood that 2 weeks was a problem, and I haven't been able to go through all the legislative history and find that out. But that tells me they knew the 2-week window was a problem. But it also tells me that our state legislature at some point determined that anything more than 4 weeks is a little bit difficult when you're running short in terms of council people or a mayor. Which if you have a council person filling that seat, then you are again short a council person.
So if that becomes a difficulty, why are we proposing to fill it in 4 months instead of 4 weeks? Why would we do a special election to delay that?
That's a good question. I can't answer that. I think somebody that was at the meeting that would be a proponent of having the special election would probably need to answer it. I will say, though, legally, it does say in state law, while there's that 4-week window, it does say at the end, there's one section that says, in lieu of filling it by the normal process, you can have a special election. But that's generally something that I think and I've done the research, I've looked at other cities, it's usually something that's determined on a case-by-case basis. It's not dictated within a city code.
Right, shall, wasn't used.
Right.
But they could have a special election. And we're putting city code in to use the word shall. So we're requiring to have a special election. We're requiring the city to spend money, $12,000 per candidate. I mean, if there happens to be 2 vacancies, we're doubling that cost. And we're going to a 4-month window of an empty seat. I don't quite understand why would we not just follow the state law when it comes to this?
This is rhetorical, right? Like this is somebody else going to answer this one. I will defer to somebody else to answer that. I hear what you're saying. I'm not properly situated to advise on anything other than what I'm proposing, what the law says, and I think what we're proposing can be done in accordance with state law, but I think there's other folks sitting on the council and some sitting in the audience that can better explain why they think a special election is appropriate, an appropriate mandate, anything beyond 1 year of a vacancy.
I was part of that subcommittee, and really the feeling from Ward 2, and I know you're a Ward 2 person, and you got to help pick who was now our Ward 2 representative over here, but the citizens didn't have a voice in that. None of the citizens had a voice. And that's the part that we're trying to get that transparency back here. Why not let the citizens decide? Yes, it's going to cost the city money, but there were citizens who were involved in this subcommittee who also helped drive this. And Rick, I guess I would appreciate if you would come up and speak a little bit to this as well.
Well, Rick's coming up. Danny, I have one more question. How many cities, Class 1 cities in Nebraska, require a special election?
A firm number I do not have. Most of them follow state law. So it's an option. It's not a mandate. There is 1 or 2, though, that have it where, and we had this previously, if there's more than half the term, then it can go that way. It can, yes. And then there is one city, I believe that's Columbus. Theirs says, and theirs is interesting, so I just wanted to point it out. Whenever the city council shall fail to consent to any appointment made hereunder by the mayor by the close of the second regular city council meeting following the announcement of the appointment, the vacancy shall be filled by a special election. So it goes through it kind of goes through the normal process when it comes to a city council for the appointment for that vacancy. But if nobody can agree on who's proposed first, then it automatically will go to a special election.
Yeah, and I spoke with the city of Columbus today, and they've never had to do that.
Yeah, so I have a long list of all the cities my office, Lene and my office talked to a lot of cities in the last few months. Some of them might have language reflecting anything involving a special election. None of them have ever done it. From everybody that we've talked to, they usually follow state law. So that's just based on the research that we have. A lot of them have never had to fill a vacancy, but they said they follow state law.
Yeah, come up, Rick.
Sure.
Rick Benson, and I have noticed he left the best for last, so we'll go with that. I started this process December 18th, and I filed a complaint because the process that I saw before the citizens, especially those of the 4th Ward, didn't necessarily represent their desires. I backed Sue Beckman, who brought forward the fact that the ordinance hadn't been followed because she didn't have a right to talk. And when I talked to some council people, there was people who weren't even informed of some of the things that were going on and were left out of the loop. And that concerns me. Councilman Beckman's recommendations and what she was suggesting had some precedents. She dealt with two vacancies, and the precedence was that there was a committee of the whole, which we classify as the finance committee, and where everybody had those chances to do that. When I was a councilman, we had the same process. So the precedence does exist for the process. And I don't think that that time, we didn't follow the process. We also, there was an option, the council in the ordinance as written today has an option to declare a special election for a city councilman. And nobody had brought that up, and that was an option for the city council. It's a shall for the mayor, but you do have an option as ordinance reads in that. So basically, it's all about one thing, and that's who elects the elected representatives for the people. And as you know me, I'm very grassroots. I'm for the people, and I think that this kind of violates their right to choose who elects them on this body, and I stay with that. There's a couple other things I'm going to address. I know he was talking about the costs in talking to Ann Prush, the county clerk. If you have the elections in the year, the election falls in as primary general, the cost is $500. If you have it otherwise, Danny's cost is accurate. So that's something to take into consideration also. But I do appreciate the mayor. We had a discussion on this. We sat and we talked about it. And we got through the process of what he went through. I talked about what I went through and what a lot of people were saying. And it was a very good process. I appreciate the mayor doing that. I appreciate Sue Beckman for bringing these things forward. Councilman Webb for pushing. And I'd like to thank the policy committee to give us the time to sit down and talk about this thing. And I think it's a very good thing. I rise in support of the changes, and I hope that we can get down the same road and give the people in the second ward a chance to pick the individuals that represent them. Councilman Lange, appreciate all the work that you've done with the city, not only in the past, but now. And if this ordinance passes, I respectfully ask that you step down. And in talks with Jerry Nordine, he'd appreciate you back on his board. So I thought I'd share that with you. So other than that, I'm open to any questions you might have. But that's basically my stance, and I'd like to thank the city for working with us.
Rick, I have one. You came to a year. Would there be any wiggle room there to change that year to 18 months or less?
You know, we're just open to discussions. If you think it needs to be amended in a different way that makes it more accurate, let's talk about it and make those changes you think are necessary. I think that the committee that met hashed over a lot of different things and stated a lot of different views, and I think Danny did a good job of putting this thing together. And if you want to make those amendments, open those amendments, let's discuss those amendments. Otherwise, I think as it goes through, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, there was just a lot of work by Danny and by everybody too, so I hate to see it not get resolved the correct way, but yeah, thank you so much, Rick, I appreciate you.
And I'll echo the fact that we did have a lot of good discussions looking into this. But this is part of the process, obviously. You know, we had, the subcommittee met with Rick. We had good discussion there. Now it's time, obviously, for the people that weren't involved in those discussions to weigh in how they feel about certainly, you know, where we're at on things. And that's kind of what this process is supposed to be.
I guess maybe I have a comment. As this most recent appointment came aboard, and previously before this, as a council, we have gotten those names ahead of time. We have gotten those names of who was on the mayor's list. And I have had the opportunity, and I don't know where it says you don't have the opportunity to go ahead and contact those individuals that were on the potential list, or that would have been the mayor's appointment that following meeting. I've had conversations, I'm sure many of you up here have had conversations with some of those individuals, whether it be this appointment or a different one, to know who you would be working with. So to say we didn't have an opportunity, I think that's a false, I think that's a false statement in my eyes, because I did take the time to have conversation with some of these individuals this time and previously as well. So we have had that opportunity to meet with them.
Did you say that I made that comment?
I never said you made what comment.
That's what I'm asking. You
I did
didn't
not say
that.
you made that comment.
Sue Beckman made those comments, said she, in our subcommittee also.
And
She
that's,
did not have those.
And I'll say that I made that comment. I did not have that opportunity. I got that list in the morning. I tried to call two of those people. They were gone or working or whatever. I never had the opportunity. So don't tell me I had an
well,
opportunity when I did
no,
not.
you did have the opportunity. You called them.
And I didn't get a response because they weren't there. So
But
how
you-
did I have the opportunity?
You had the opportunity to call them.
I got the
They didn't
list in the
answer the
morning,
phone.
and the interview started that afternoon.
Okay.
I will
And-
beg to
and-
differ this, and I will argue this to the,
Okay.
In
For the
all
sake of
due
conversation.
respect, Councilman Hildebrand, you're splitting hairs. That's exactly what you're doing. The ordinance is pretty clear, and there's precedents that calls it out in the right way. Sue addressed that. I share her sentiments, and like I said, you're splitting hairs.
One of the things they mentioned, and both have been previous council people, obvious over the years, and they used to have a finance committee that would meet early mornings, I think the Monday of the city council meeting. I think that maybe under Al Roeder, maybe somebody can correct me from staff who was around back then under Al Roeder and Mayor Fuchman, what? It was prior to that?
Went way even when Mr. Nolan was the city administrator.
So about what time frame do you think that was?
Oh, it was.
'Cause that was one thing we-
Nolan was here in 79, 78. Yeah.
Well, it was one thing
Lou
that,
Wetmore
it was one thing
mayor.
I heard numerous times made reference, was that the finance committee, when they did have an opportunity to interview candidates, those interviews were conducted within that finance committee, which we don't have, obviously, we don't have a group like that to get together anymore, so it makes it a little more difficult for us to navigate that, and it's unfortunate we didn't get the 4 weeks right away. That really put us in a tight spot. And all this discussion, basically points back to me, I'm right, because I'm the one who was pushing hard to change how we had done things in the past. I wasn't a fan of the fact that we just would interview a candidate with the mayor, or the council president, and some staff. And that's all I've ever seen since I've been on council. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's typically how, since I've been on council, those are done. So I wanted to change it up a little bit from that and make it more attainable for the council to see. I just didn't quite get that opportunity in the window we had. I wish we could have, but we didn't. So now, with that being said, we're here today because of, obviously, there was, yourself and others that wanted to see some changes made. I obviously wanted to see some changes made too. I don't know how we all get there to what this looks like. I think this is a good start in this discussion. I can tell that some, just by the comments being made, that not everybody's on the same page here. I would hate to see this thing just go down, and I think the discussion still needs to be had on where we move forward. So I don't know what that means.
I'll add a little bit to that, Shane. I don't think I'm a fan of the 1 year. I don't think I'm a fan of the requirement of a special election. But I don't necessarily mind Columbus's option, where if we went through every single candidate and we couldn't agree upon somebody, then it goes to a special election. I don't necessarily mind that, but having it a requirement is 1 year, I think is it's a tough reason to spend that kind of money for somebody that might be in that position for, say, 8 months. I think we're probably on a good start, right? And if we decide to table this and maybe make some revisions, I'm cool with that. But I don't think I could.
I think part of
I don't
the
think I
thing
could
too
go with
is
it the way it
there
is
seemed
now.
to be some ambiguity as to what the ordinance said as it exists. And I think this is an attempt to kind of clear up some of that ambiguity, so there's a better understanding of where we're going. And I think there's a first step in it.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely a first step. The 2 weeks and now 4 weeks, and 4 weeks makes a hell of a difference too. But we're possibly on the right track. I just don't know if I can agree to this one that we're on right now.
Okay, I guess, I'd like to speak to this a little bit because apparently I'm the one that has created this. Because from 1986 to 2024, this has never been a problem. And I will tell you that from 2000 to 2020, we had, I want to say, somewhere between 4 and 6 appointments in there. It's never been a problem. It's never been a problem because those appointments occurred in Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 4. Some of the members that sit here were actually appointed that way. The process isn't a bad process. I guess because Ward 2 apparently must be special or something, we can't live with the same things that the other wards were able to live with and work through that way. I think the idea of a mandatory special election is foolhardy and is a knee-jerk reaction to disappointments because I'm appointed. I'll just put it that way. There were 12 candidates, I believe, and so I ended up being successful going through it. Now the question would be, would 12 people have signed up to run a campaign for a 3-month period? In this case, it occurs in December, January, and February. I highly doubt that. I mean, campaigning's hard enough that way when it's at least halfway warm. How would you like to be out campaigning today or yesterday or the days before that? I mean, I think this is, again, as I noted, I think this is a knee-jerk reaction to disappointment. I think what needs to be amended here, and whether it occurs with this ordinance as presented now, I believe, and I could never figure out why the 4 weeks got defeated. That made sense. 2 weeks is just way too short. I mean, it worked before that, but when we were doing the appointments the other times, from my recollection of them, they were in the summertime and they did not have two major holidays falling in on top of it that way, and actually shirt-tailing a third one in, Thanksgiving in there. So, again, I think it's relatively poorly conceived, and the option to have a special election instead of being mandated to have a special election, I think is more appropriate. And then the extension of the time period from 2 weeks to 4 weeks is to follow state law, which follows what the state had put forward. And the state's saying, we want to, as Danny presented it, the state doesn't want you sitting out there for potentially 90 days with a seat not filled. So, and that's what a special election would do at the best. I'm not debating with you. You wanted my opinion. That's what I'm putting out there. So I'm not debating with you.
Well, I think you're missing a point. Nothing's been about you.
No.
This has been about the process that we go through and how do we get there. Nobody has ever pointed to you other than you sit in that chair. And to say it's well conceived, obviously you don't listen to the people in the second ward and what they're saying. So I'm saying this is not about you, this is about the process and how we get there.
And I'd have to take extreme exception with that, because I do listen to the people in the second ward. And the people in the second ward did not tell me that they want to see a special election. I think there are a number, not necessarily a majority or anything, but I think there's a number of people out there that are upset at my appointment.
I can answer that.
So don't tell me that
I would
I'm not
ask you
listening.
that you resign from the seat, we pass the ordinance, and let's see if the people in the second ward would elect you.
If I may, I do want to interrupt. You did say something interesting, Mr. Benson, in terms of your conversation with Ian Bruce, and in that if it was held as a part of a general election, it would be significantly cheaper. While that may be true, I do want everyone to consider what that means. First of all, it has to be a special election. That's what's laid out in state law. There is it's 32-606.01. It has to do with, so it's a special election. It says any candidate in a special election to fill a vacancy, they can have their name it's a special election, but it's done in conjunction with the statewide primary in general. So if this were to happen, and this would have been, let's say, 2026 that we're in now, and we do have an election in, next year, it says on or before March 1st, in terms of the filing forms, on or before March 1st for a special election to be held with the primary, and then on or before August 1st for a special election to be held in conjunction with the statewide general. So obviously, generally, when that filing deadline, there's a March time frame to get on that ballot. But what we're talking about here, first of all, it has to happen at the perfect timing. But second of all, then we're talking about a situation where we're looking at a 9-month vacancy.
Well, I think
So
the
it's-
process, we're talking about the 4 weeks, to get the process in going, within your 4-week time frame is what the state ordinance is.
No,
State
that's
law
not what
says.
it is at all, because you said it would be cheaper if we did it in accordance with a general,
Well,
but if
I'm
this.
referring to the 4-week thing. The
But if the
process
vacancy
started
were to
within that
happen at the
4
same time it did now, when we were going into an election year,
I
what you're
can
saying is
only
it's a
answer by
9-month
what Ann-
vacancy.
Yeah, what, if Ann give me some wrong information, that's on her.
No, I don't think she did give you wrong information. All I'm saying is that besides the fact it would have to fall perfectly, we're also talking about a significant
Sure.
vacancy,
And
a
that may be
significant
true.
period of
That may be
time where
true.
we're one council person
Sure.
short. So I don't know the practicality of that all the way around, sir.
Yeah, and 12,500 every time is not necessarily true either. It could be cheaper.
If it were done in conjunction with the statewide primary, yes.
Right.
Rick, first of all, I'd like to thank you and all the members of the subcommittee and all the citizens that showed up to be a part of that, because I think that shows a great interest on and a great loyalty to our municipality and to our town. And I appreciate that, and thank you very much, and all those who came in and partook in this. The one thing that I just want to point out as being a proponent of this, of special elections in this case. I do want to just point out and say that I think that I agree with the councilman who said that 1 year was probably too short of a period. Just because by the time you get in, now you've got 8 months, and now and I think that's a great. But I think where we're at is a great starting point, and I'd love to see us explore that just a little bit further and do some financial looking at, is it really worth, and I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just saying looking at, is it worth $12,000 for someone to come in for 8 months? And to the point of, well, would anyone have even put in their name? Well, I think if we make some kind of a provision in there that says, if only one person puts their name on, well, we're not going to run a special election at that point. We can wait. Can we put in some kind of provision that says, if at the end of it we said we're running a special election and the only person that puts their name on the ballot is Rick Benson, well, why would we hold a special election for one person? It's not a special election. It is the only person who said they wanted to campaign. So I think that's something else for us to just consider because once we mandate that it has to be a special election, we've now mandated the fact that Jim Lange or Rick Benson is the only person that put their name in, and now we still have to run an election, and we still have to spend $12,000. Like I said, I think I think you guys have done a great job. I think we have a great starting point, and I would just like to see us, with no offense to those people who worked on this, I would love to see us just go back and say, hey, let's address these couple of things that the councilmen who weren't part of our subcommittee brought up, and do something, maybe just that tweak. And I know you're welcome to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And there's some in some emails that exchanged with Danny. I think I addressed a couple of those concerns of the year thing and what we could probably do there. It didn't get put on this form of the ordinance, but there was some of that discussion on some of that short-term stuff. So, like I said, if you feel like you need to make an amendment to it, then that's what you need to do. We're here coming out of that subcommittee with a draft and what we think is a fair thing, and that's where we're at. And like I said, I appreciate the mayor for his help in helping drive this.
Well, any more questions here, Mr. Benson? Okay,
Hey, thanks.
thank you. Anybody else have anything to say?
It's always entertaining, isn't it? My name's David Jansma. About a year and a half ago, I asked most of you sitting up here who you work for, and you gave me a dumbfounded look. I think the citizens need the opportunity when something comes up. I don't envy any of you going through this process. But if there were 12 names, I think everybody sitting up here should have had the opportunity to spend 5 minutes with them, 10 minutes, whatever the clock would allow. So everybody gets an opinion. I was a little disappointed when I found out they didn't. I know for a fact 2 people were told no, they couldn't go in there. I think it's wrong. If it's a financial thing, that's one thing. If it's a citizens making the decision, that's the most important thing for this community. We talk about where we're getting, what we do, all the things we throw money in. I think who sits up here, and I'm from Ward 2, is very important to be representative of the citizens that care. And I think you guys all need to look at that, whether it be now, future, whatever. Because I think the people that speak up here and the people that are representing us, every now and then get a negative attitude or a negative look from the citizens. It's time to turn it around. It's time to get the citizens on your side that will back you and care for you and know you're doing the best for not necessarily their ward, but for the whole community. Keep that in mind and think about approaching this the proper way. You guys know I'm not a numbers guy. I know what's right and I know what's wrong. It's time to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jim McKenzie. I think the biggest problem that I saw was the interview process. And in the years that I was here, I believe the full council always participated in the interviews of the replacement candidates. Did that happen in the last 8 years? I don't think so. It probably didn't, but I don't know that for sure. So I think when Shane, you said you probably didn't see that, it probably didn't happen in the last 8 years, but I think prior to that, it always used to.
No, ever since I've been on council, I've never been privy to an interview process. The only time I was available to me was when I became council president.
Because when they talked about finance committees, those.
I was selected also by Sue, and it was the council president, and maybe the city attorney, but the city administrator and Sue were in there. There's maybe 3 or 4, and that was it. I never talked to a single councilman when I got picked.
Okay.
So that was
I guess
10
I'm going,
years ago, I think.
All right, I'm going way back, but it used to be that way, and I think that's why the ordinance was written, was to allow all the council, because ultimately, the council has the authority to approve or disapprove. And if they don't sit in on those interviews to see the candidates and see all the candidates, then how do they know if that's the best person for the job? And so that's I think my biggest concern is the full council needs to be able to participate because they ultimately are the decision makers. Shane appoints, but the full council makes that decision. And how can you make that decision without being able to interview all the candidates? Thank you.
I would venture to say we all agree with that statement. I definitely agree with that on the interview process, moving forward. I think we've had a lot of good input tonight on this. We've had a lot of good discussion. I think the subcommittee members that are sitting here right now have probably heard what the rest of the council is looking for. They've heard what the public's looking for. Danny, how big of a time frame crunch are we under with trying to get this done? I mean, is this is this something that has to be done tomorrow, has to be done by next, or is this something we can build into to get what, kind of what the general public's looking for, what the council's looking for, and try to build a policy around that?
As long as none of you are planning on resigning or moving out of your ward, we have a little bit of time. But I can have this, it's sounding like we're probably wanting a subsequent policies and procedures meeting. I can have something ready to go based on what I'm hearing here. It's kind of, I'm throwing a dart in the dark a little bit because I'm just going to try to take everybody's feedback and incorporate it into something, just like I did the first time, and then go from there. So we can certainly do that and keep coming back. I mean, I'm fine to keep coming back until we get it right. It's an important thing. It's a controversial thing. So we can have it as ready as soon as the next meeting or have a subcommittee meeting and then go from there.
Danny, I think we have our next subcommittee on the 27th. Is that correct? 25th or 27th? The last Monday of the month.
Let's see here.
Yes, yeah, so our next regular standing policies and procedures subcommittee will be next Thursday, February 27th. So at that time, it would be too late. The agenda would be published to bring something back on March 3rd. So the soonest we'd be able to bring something back would be March 17th.
I don't know, obviously I don't vote unless it's a split vote, so you guys have to kind of decide what you want to do here with this policy.
I'd like to see us table this for now and move it back to subcommittee to review and make changes based on tonight's meeting.
I guess my question is, why would we, if we're doing this significant changes on it, why were we even considering tabling it? Why wouldn't we just kill it and redo it?
Well, I had that feeling too. I just wanted to make sure we've had where everybody was kind of landing on it.
That makes, I mean, there was.
I think with the process, if we just kill it, then does that mean we're done dealing with it? I don't want to put that perception out there that that's the end,
I don't see that we're done with it, but the document that we would have significant number of changes to it and clarifications. I think it would be a cleaner act to just, defeat it and go back, they meet next week, Thursday. Start over at that point then.
I don't think it's a start over point, Jim. I think the subcommittee did a lot of work and I got a lot of input from citizens. So I think I would prefer that we say we just table it, amend it, go back, because we've got a lot of good points in here that I don't want to throw away. My perception.
I think maybe Danny probably has a better view on how we should go forward on this, but I think this is similar to what we did on one other one here 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, where there was enough changes on here where it was cleaner to come back with a brand new version, brand new ordinance, than it is to come back with, we're gonna make this change and this change and this change, where it's somewhat confusing. Not trying to kill it and put it in the trash, just trying to make it cleaner when it comes forward. But I don't know, Danny, you go ahead and tell us what you prefer, I guess.
I can handle it either way. So if you ultimately decide to table it based on perception and that, appearing better, and if we start getting into it and we decide that there's a lot more amendments that need to be made, just like Councilman Lange said, it'll be a rewrite and it will just be a separate council item. So we've done that before where we table something and then once I get in, I'm like, this is significant enough that it makes more sense to start all over. So both items will be on the agenda. The first one's the old one, the second one's the new one, or vice versa. So if you feel better about tabling it, you could do that. If you just want to shoot it, kill it, you can do that too. I don't know until I get into the subcommittee process, we get into the rewrite of this. I don't know how extensive the updating will be.
What would you prefer? I think that's really what the question was, is to kill this ordinance or table this and do some more amendments to it and then kill it anyways and come back with a cleaner version. I think that was the question that was directed toward to you.
And I guess that was a question I didn't really want to answer, but if you had my preference, I would rather you kill it because I'm 99% sure I'm just going to rewrite it anyways.
Discuss me
I think that we're talking about mandatory special election. We didn't like the year point. Isn't there also something we put in there, Danny, where a vote of the council could, with the majority vote of the council, that we could appoint a seat versus a special election if we see fit?
Can you say that another way?
So
It's late and I'm moving slow.
Say we set this ordinance up and it's saying 18 months to 2 years, we're going to do a special election.
Okay.
But if the council decides to appoint the seat, by a majority of the council, they can decide to appoint versus doing a special election.
I think I understand what you're saying. There's a way we could craft that. I mean, and it could be as simple as, similar to what Columbus does. You go through the process. Okay, we're talking here, but right now we're talking about a council vacancy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If, let's say we go through the full process, because it's mandated right now that, with the changes that everybody on council interviews all the applicants, all the qualified applicants. So let's say you go through that process and the mayor puts forth a name and it's voted down. You could do it that way where then it automatically goes to a special election. Would that kind of accomplish what you're talking about?
Well, I'm just saying, like, you can put this into motion and say 2 years special election, but for if the council deems they want to appoint somebody,
Okay.
then we can forego that whole special election with approval of the council.
Yeah,
And so then
with a
it-
majority vote or a super majority
Yeah,
vote of
so
the council,
It
yes.
says that the council's all in favor of not doing a special election, and the council's in favor of appointing somebody. That way it takes a buy-in from the council to say, yeah, we all want to go this way.
Well, and that would make sense because in the instance that we do only have one applicant or we have, even two applicants or,
Yeah.
then that would be a mechanism for bypass. So generally speaking, it would be a special election, except when there's a majority vote of the council to just move forward with the interview process.
So I
We
don't
could-
think we're
we could
that
put
far
it that way.
off from what the existing to say, hey, we want to change the timeframe of a special election. And then we also want to give the council power to change this to at least follow minimum state statute, but also change it if we have to. We're changing two things right there. We're not scrapping the whole thing.
And are we saying, was that with the 1 year, or are we moving to a 2 year? Where if more than half the term exists, because I know there's
Yeah.
been some speculation
That's
there.
what's been talked about here, 18 months to 2 years.
So, and I think that honestly, the cleaner thing that we've had in our code before and that other cities have is if there's more than half of it remaining,
Mhm.
then there's this preference unless otherwise voted on by the council. I think 2
Exactly.
years is probably a cleaner timeline. If there's more than half of a term remaining, that's probably a little bit easier.
And if you could get a vote in front of the council to either vote to do that or not do that, that leads to the transparency we're asking for. Because you're getting the council on the same page to either say, do a special election, or no, let's not. Because right now, the council doesn't feel on the same page with how they're selected. And it creates this tension, because they feel like there's transparency, or we don't feel like we had a say in what's being done here. So I don't feel like.
But you want to change it because state law right now says we can do it this way unless you can't have a special election. But what you're thinking is we lean towards, we have a special election unless
The
there's a
council's-
vote.
Well, yeah, but give the council the authority to not do it or to do it. But the council will have to all be on the same page to do either one.
I'm going to make a recommendation that our ordinance follow the state law.
With this, I didn't really want to go into the weeds on this, but since Frank is hell-bent on doing that.
So here's where your problem's gonna be, Councilman Webb. This is what I wanted to confirm. So the issue here is it's always going to be the mayor's proposal with the vote of the council. So we can, yeah, you can certainly put that in there.
I'm saying if we want to circumvent the special election, if we feel like there's no reason to have it, then the council can put a vote to the council to do that.
But the mayor will have to suggest that.
Yeah.
And he can easily say, he or she could easily say in the future, I'm gonna let the council, I'm gonna put it on here, and then to let the council vote. That's certainly something that we could work on putting into the code. At the end of the day, though, how state law is contemplated for our current form of government, of municipal government, the mayor puts it forth, and then the council has to vote. The council, the mayor puts the name, the council votes. So either way, whether you're doing it, whether there's a vote for a special election or not, that's
In
gonna
all
be
fairness,
mayor driven.
the mayor tried to do this 4-week thing, and I think it was voted against by a couple on this council. Through this process, the reason we're here is because the mayor was trying to be transparent and have this open interview process. We found out through 7 on the council that 4 is a quorum. I was actually one of the councilmen that was due to interview the 12 candidates. I did not find out until like the last hour or two that I was no longer one of them. So that is what's leading to all this. It's poor communication from whoever was setting that up.
And the poor communication, frankly, it's on me. When we put together the subcommittee, I was one of the ones that said, I think the idea is justifiable if you put together a subcommittee.
You were
and
supposed to
have
call me, Danny?
One from, no, sir. It was supposed to be it was supposed to be the senior member from each ward. And I proposed that. I completely supported that. It was not me who discovered, it was our city clerk that discovered that actually seven meant that 4 was a quorum. So that was my
Guys, we're
oversight.
getting way into the weeds. What we tried to do didn't work. We wanted to go 4
Right.
weeks, didn't happen, so now we're here.
Yeah.
It's just, that's where we're at. So
Yeah.
now we're discussing it. So ultimately, right now, we just have to make a decision. You guys have to make a decision. Are you voting on what we have up here tonight and vote on it? Or are we tabling what you have up here tonight so that it can go back to subcommittee and have an opportunity to be looked at? It's up.
Well,
Somebody's got to call the, get
I
it
mean,
out there and get it
it's
done.
not totally out of line to suggest ordinance like this, given the fact the way the last bill was handled, so.
Nobody's saying you're out of line. I'm just,
Well, I'm not saying I'm out, and the ordinance is out of line,
right.
so.
Kylie, what do we need to do to vote table versus kill? What do we have to do on that? Just make the motion to table?
Yeah, so so basically, if you want to kill it, mayor's just gonna call for the vote and you're just gonna vote it down. If you want to table it, I need a motion in a second, but as soon as somebody calls for a table, no more discussions, immediate a vote. So it's up to you.
I move to table.
A second.
Okay, please vote.
Please vote.
Sorry, revote. It was on the wrong thing. Please vote. Okay, is it going now? We're hung. You're gonna have to vote. So we're hung, so you're gonna have to vote whether you want it tabled or not. Yeah. At this time, we had a hung vote, so mayor had to vote to break the tie. Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Jensen, Webb, Beckman. Voting in opposition, Granquist, Arns, Lengy, Hildebrand. Mayor broke the tie in the affirmative. Motion carries to table. Yep. Motion, yep, meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Never click into it. Yeah, get that up on social media.